To really understand the value of OpenShift running on OpenStack, it's important to take a look at a traditional IT environment. So in a traditional environment, if you install OpenShift, you'll give the developer access to self-service, to applications and storage and network, etc. But when they try to provision an application that needs storage, OpenShift will create what's called a volume claim. And this volume claim is satisfied by what we call a persistent volume. These persistent volumes then have to be attached to actual real storage in some way, shape, or form. In a traditional environment, you could wire it up so that a persistent volume, every time one is created, it goes and fires off a ticket. A storage administrator, eventually gets a hold of that ticket, works through the ticket, provisions the storage, and then hands it back to OpenShift. But that would be a slow manual process. In an OpenStack environment, if you run OpenShift on OpenStack, OpenStack happens to be really good at automating this exact kind of operation. So ahead of time, the storage administrator would come in and set storage policy and quotas, but then these volumes could be provisioned automatically, and they could be provisioned based on policy as opposed to a manual intervention every time. Now we're going to do a quick demo to show how powerful the integration between OpenShift and OpenStack is. On the right, we have a persistent volume claim set up ahead of time. We're going to submit this persistent volume claim to the OpenShift API to provision it. You'll notice on the left now, a persistent volume has been created to satisfy the persistent volume claim, and immediately following that, OpenShift talked to OpenStack, and in the bottom left window, you saw that an OpenStack Cinder volume was created to satisfy this persistent volume with the exact size needed. And when you think about doing this at scale, that's when this becomes really powerful. So not just a single application, but when you start to look at running many applications together in a multi-tenant environment, this becomes very, very powerful. You can imagine with tens or hundreds or thousands of applications, you could not scale, with a manual intervention process where a storage administrator comes in and provisions the storage. So that's where OpenShift on OpenStack really shines.